Back in town on a red eye. Baby, don't make me wait. Body like, been a long while. And I just wanna taste. Let's be alone. I put it down when I come around.
Hi, you guys, and welcome back to Talking Smack. I am super excited to have Karen on the pod today. Some of you may know her on social media. We'll have all her links and everywhere you can find her in the show notes. But I want to dive right into it. I want to ask you, so you started as a lash artist and then you kind of like brought in like fun, sexy topics. And I love that your bio at one point was like wannabe sexologist. And then you added like vibrators to your, retail sales, and you created a whole other account, and like body positivity has been a huge thing that you've talked about. What made you want to incorporate that into your business? And what did that look like? Were you nervous at first, or were you just like, hell yeah, let's go for it?
I started talking about sex in my studio because during the pandemic, I went through this whole like sexual journey because I was bored for 4 months. I was scrolling on Instagram, reading the books, and it just opened my mind. So I just became like this like facts person, just telling the clients in the studio, because I worked at a lash studio at the time. I was like, did you know coconut oil actually breaks down condoms? I learned that today. And it just turned into this thing that the clients were coming in and they're like, so what are you going to talk to us today about? What's going on? And then I turned it into a blog and I was posting on it consistently. And clients would walk in and, hey, I read your blog. Oh my God, where can I get that toy? Or, hey, I just bought this because of your blog. And it turned into that. And then just one day I started talking about it on Instagram on my lash page, and people were okay with it. So I just kept going. Then obviously I made my more spicier Instagram, and then it just kept growing and people just started knowing me like the lash artist that talks about like sex all the time. It
Mhm.
just I just rolled with it.
I think that's so fun, especially too, like it's such a huge testament that you literally get to be who you are and showing up authentically as who you are. Like you're going to attract those people that want to have those conversations, that are interested in the same kind of things. And I think how fun for clients coming in, like, ooh, what fact am I going to learn today? Or what, spicy new position or whatever am I going to try? And I've had fun following your page because I'm like, oh, I had no idea. And I think it's fun because so many of us who are just constantly wanting to learn whatever that is, whatever the topic is, like it's so interesting. And I think sexual health is so important. And for me growing up, it was so taboo to talk about sex or talk about pleasure or talk about anything like that. And I think it's so interesting that you've opened up a conversation for so many people who probably had similar experiences to me where it wasn't something that was like openly okay to talk about.
Oh yeah, in my household it wasn't either. People think that I come from like this like a free-willed whatever type of life. I didn't. My parents were Catholic. My grandma was that like annoying grandma that would like judge you all the time. But as I got older, I became to understand who I was, and I'm like, I am interested in fetishes. I'm interested in kink. I find this world so interesting. It brings me peace. It brings me confidence, which actually, the confidence that I got from sex helped me build a six-figure lash business. I was able to attract clients because I was talking about sex. I went to Layer Slayer because I sold 10 vibrators. Because I'm like, hey, I can attend this class if 10 people buy vibrators. People bought them from me. So it was just a thing like if you put yourself out there, you're gonna get it back. It's gonna come to you. I promise you.
Hmm. I remember you posting on stories selling vibrators because you're like, I want to take this class. This is what I need to do. And I vividly remember that. And I was like, that is so cool. And like something from a psychology standpoint, as far as like selling goals or having like group goals, like, I used to tell people, having like a referral program is amazing for your business. And while that's true, I was listening to another podcast that was talking about from a psychology standpoint, having a shared goal that other people feel like they get to get in on So as far as you being like, hey, if I get to do this, I get to go to this class. So everyone's like, hey, we get to help send her to this class. And I think that is so cool the way that that happened and worked out.
Yeah.
And I guess to like segue into a question. So you've talked about tons of different toys and tons of different things. Do you retail your favorite ones or do you retail like how did that work when you were like, hey, I want to start retailing these products?
So I jumped into retail not knowing how to retail. So it actually what didn't go great, but I basically reached out to a bunch of brands and I'm like, who can I even get retail from? And one of them was Dame Products, which is actually now in Target now. Um, it's a women-run company that, you know, promotes for women. So I really like that their toys didn't look like anything. Like you could have it and it didn't look like a penis. It didn't look like anything. So it was more discreet because a lot of my clients were like, how can I use this with my partner? Like my pink dildo is turning them off. I'm like, well, get this one that doesn't look like anything. They'll be less scared of it. They won't feel intimidated. And it started working, and that was like how I started retailing it. Also, a lot of my clients didn't want to go to sex stores because they were like, it's so ugly in there. There's like a weird guy in there sometimes. Like, I don't want to do that. So I'm like, how about I have the products and you guys just get them from me? You're coming for your lash appointment, or you just order on my site, which is the lash page, and you get it shipped to you. And you don't have to worry about it being like from Adam and Eve or wherever. It's from the current company.
Mhm.
So
That is so cool. I guess too, like, again, be as open as you want. I know you're super open on your page.
too
Have
open.
you, yeah, have you experienced that like with partners like being intimidated by using products or not or toys specifically or like not wanting to use toys because they're like, why can't, that maybe their ego of being like, well, I should be able to, please you and you don't need this toy, or have you experienced more people being like, oh no, let's work with this toy together. Like, let's have fun together. Or any like client experiences where they're like, exactly like you said, like, oh, we don't want to bring this in because it looks like this, or maybe it's bigger than me, or whatever. Like, what has your experience been like with that?
I think because I'm so open that I talk about sex on the internet, people kind of expect that from me. So like a guy will pick me up and be like, "Remember your toys? Bring." I'm like, "What do you want me to bring? Like, what am I bringing?" They're like, "I don't know, just bring whatever." So I think it's because of the conversations that I'm having with them saying, "I like this. How do you feel about this?" When you have conversations outside of the bedroom goes smoother because you guys already have an understanding of your boundaries, your limits, what you're interested in, what you're willing to try. And if it's a no, it's a no. Then you don't have to try it in the bedroom. There's no awkwardness, there's no weirdness. You can just experiment. And if in the moment you don't like it, just say no. I think that people forget that human communication is the biggest aspect of it. It's not even about the toys or what you're doing, it's the communication that you have. It'll save a lot of people a lot of like weirdness in the bedroom. And I don't think people understand that. So
What
that's
do you
why I
think
always want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What do you think is a good way for people to like bring up those conversations? Because I know like for me, growing up that way and like sex was shameful, and I grew up in a Christian household and it was very, and I went to a Christian school and it was very much like abstinence and all this stuff, and you're not taught that like when you're with that person, like it is supposed to be good, it is supposed to be pleasurable, it is supposed to be like both ways. It's not supposed to be like what it is in the movies. And I think that's hard too because so much of everything in the movies is so wrong and like not what you want. And so like, do
Mhm.
you have any advice for anyone who's like, I want to bring up this conversation with my partner, or any like icebreaker questions? Or I know, I've never used them, but I've seen some of those apps where like it'll send you both a question, and then if one person doesn't answer, it doesn't show the other person, or if they both answer the same thing, then it shows that you matched, kind of thing.
I just tell people sext each other. That's the best and easiest way that you're going to know what your partner wants to do is having a little sexting vibe. Like, hey, so what do you think about this? And if they're like, not really, and especially if you do it through text, no foul, no harm. Like, it's not in person. You're not going to feel embarrassed. It's like, oh, no. Nah. Just be honest. Is it a yes or a no? They'll be honest with you. I think that women don't understand that men are going to tell you exactly what they want. I think women also are like, what if he thinks I'm a weirdo because I want to try this? I promise you he's not. He's seen it in porn somewhere and is like, I mean, if you're down, I'm down. Okay, cool, let's do it. Men aren't gonna say no unless it's like something to do with their butt, then they're gonna be stressed out and then like they're gonna die. But it's fine. They'll figure it out. But beyond that, just communicate. Just have the ball. Say it with your chest. Just be like, I want to do this. Are you down? If they're not, they're not. There are checklists that you can do. Like, would you try this? Do it on a wine night when you guys are a little tipsy. Hey, how do you feel about trying this position? They're a little lit. They're going to be like, no, yeah, maybe let's do it. Why not?
Mhm.
I've just always shot my shot and it works out for me. So that's the advice that I give people. Just shoot your shot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think too, like, also not taking it personally if it's not something that your partner is comfortable with, and not realizing it's not a reflection on you, and it's just simply something they're not comfortable with, and realizing like, oh, they might, instead of taking it in a way of like, oh, well, they don't want to do this because they don't want to do it with me, or they think I'm gross now because I might want to try this, and realizing that everyone has different comfort levels, and you're going to find that, common ground of, exploration that you both want to play around with together.
And it's like, just even if your mind, you feel like you don't want to try it, look into it, research it. Maybe you'll actually want to do it. Like I went to, because I go to like kink and fetish parties, because that's who I am as a person. So I actually went to a dungeon a few weeks ago and I didn't know what to expect, but I walked around and I saw all kinds of stuff and I was just like, that's a nope for me. But oh wow, that looks interesting. Oh my God, that's so cool. I've never seen that before. And it was such an experience to see that a lot of the things that are feel so crazy and wild to us really aren't. Like, for example, shibari, which is the ropes. When you get tied in into ropes, watching it being done in person in front of me, I realized the trust and the mental connection. It's not even sexual. It's just, I trust you with my body to suspend me in this way. And the breathing, the connection that we're building is what's the turn on. This is this is the satisfaction and the gratification we're getting out of this. So I always tell people, look into why this person might possibly want to do this because it might not be the act, it might be what they're getting from it. Like if I'm blindfolding you, it's because I want you to trust me. If I'm bondaging you, if I'm tying you up, it's I want you to trust me that I have your safety in mind and it's out of love and care. So it's so much deeper than just the sexual acts. And if you really ask those questions, like, so why do you want to do this? What's interesting about it to you? You might get a whole nother explanation that you didn't even expect, and you might want to do it after the fact.
That's so interesting. And I feel like that's something like I've started to realize too, like the different things that I like or that we like together. It's more based on trust than anything else. And uh yeah, it's so wild to think about that. And I think it's fun to explore and figure out what you like and you don't like. And I think exactly like you said, it's the communication with your partner and realizing that you do have each other's backs and you are in it together. And if you don't like something, then it's no problem. Move on to the next thing, and it's not a big deal.
Hmm.
So I know you talk a lot about like situationships and stuff too. And like that's super fascinating to me because, I've been in my fair share of situationships and why do you think that happens? Or do you think it's because of lack of communication or like the whole friends with benefits things, like no clear boundaries, and then people end up catching feelings and it's like, what are we doing? What's happening? What's your take on that?
So I've had different type of situationships. Like, for example, I've had a fuck buddy on and off since I was 19. I'm 33, so it's been a while. But it's the foundation of that relationship is very like, this is just sexual. We're cool. We get along. We have so much respect for each other. But beyond that, we've made a pact, no feelings. And it's worked because we both abide by this. But then I've had the situationships, one in particular, that put me in therapy, where I thought we were building a relationship. I thought that we're moving forward. The red flags were pink and rose colored glasses. And I just was building in my mind something that wasn't there. And so I feel like a lot of women end up in situationships because they see the actions but don't hear the words. If someone tells you, I don't know what we are, that's your answer. Or I don't want a relationship right now. They don't want a relationship with you. That's why it's always why didn't he want to be with me, but he's with the next girl? It's because we see those actions like, oh, but he's acting like a boyfriend. No, he's just enjoying his time with you and loving these benefits that he's getting, but he doesn't really want anything serious. So, situationships, I could write a PhD thesis on them just because of how many I've witnessed, how many I've experienced. But I think they're avoidable if you communicate clearly. The first second that you ask them, what are your goals? What are you looking for in dating? They're like, I don't know. Like, I'm just going with the flow. Okay, so you have no goals. You're not looking for anyone. You don't want anything. I'm going to leave this right here. It doesn't matter how amazing you are or how cool the vibes are. I'm going to leave this here because you don't know what you want. And I want a relationship. I'm dating for marriage. I'm dating for whatever it is that you're dating for. If they don't know, they don't know. And believe them. We tend not to believe them. Believe them. They don't know. So
Mhm.
it's interesting. Also, people confuse situationships with fuck buddy situations. And I'm like, fuck buddy is friends with benefits. We forget the friends part. Are you guys friends? Does this person have your back? Not just in oh, he's gonna give you like great sex, but if you catch an STI, is he gonna slut shame you or is he gonna be a friend and tell you that it's gonna be okay and he's gonna go get tested and get medicine too? And it happens. Um, we don't think of the consequences of what could happen and how this person is going to be in our life in those consequences. So that's a very big part of this friends with benefits idea that people don't take into consideration. Like, if this guy doesn't even pick up the plan B, is he really your friend? Like, are you emotionally taken care of in this situation? Yes, it can just be about sex, but there's like basic respect that has to be included in it. That's why I'm always talking about it. I'm always coming for men. If men come for me, I let them know, like, but you're not even their friend. So you're a one night stand. So why would I keep seeing you?
Yeah. And to piggyback off something you said, like take people as they are. Like when they're showing you actions or saying certain things to you, you have to understand that that's where they're at. They may not be in a mental space where they're ready to take on a relationship or they're ready to do that, and listen to them. And if you're in the headset of like, or head mind space of like, oh, well, I can change their mind or I can do this. Like, do you really want to have to be in a relationship where you had to change their mind? No, you want somebody who wants you and they're like, fuck yeah, you're it. I want to be with you. And looking for something like that while having fun along the way and not denying yourself like fun things here and there and dates and stuff. But like, I think for me too, like my perspective on, and I've talked about this openly and publicly, and I went through a divorce, and dating after that was so different than dating was before. Because dating before, when I was 23, 24 years old, I was like, I am ready for marriage. I want to be with this person. Like, I need to have kids. I need to do all this. And after going through that, I realized, like, I listen to Esther Perel a lot. I love everything that she has to say. And she says there's a difference between finding, you can have a lot of love stories, but who can you build your life story with? And it's so important for me to find that person that I know that I can build a life with, who's going to have my back, who's going to feel like a real partnership. And I've never felt something like that before where I felt like somebody really had my back. I kind of felt like we were always on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as like what we believed in or what our values were. But in my mind, I was like, I have this timeline on when I need to get married, when I want to have children. And, those are still goals of mine. Like I want to get married again. I want to have children. But it's about finding the right person. I think, the way society puts it all together is it's kind of like there's a timeline for us, and we all kind of think like, oh, well, all these people that I went to high school with like got married around this age and I'm so behind or I'm so whatever. And I think it's so important to find that person who has your back. You have the same values, you have the same goals, and ultimately you're on the same page, and you're a true partnership, because it is so different. And just knowing, again, having that self-worth of realizing you're worth the wait to find that person who's a fuck yes to you, and you're a fuck yes to them, and you have those same goals of building a life.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was a little different. I've never been married. My last serious relationship was actually before I had my son. He's 8. Um, I didn't understand myself, and I ended up having a oops baby. My son was from just a guy that was going out to the bars with, and ended up being his dad. So dating after that and finding myself and finding the confidence in who I am. Now I walk into a date and I'm like, I'm the best thing that's ever going to happen to you. Just letting you know. Like, they'll be like, oh my God, you're so funny. I'm like, I know. That's my answer to everything. I know. I want you to understand that I know what I bring to the table. Oh, you're so gorgeous. I know. Thank you. Or, wow, you're so driven in your business. I know. Thank you. A lot of women walk into rooms and don't understand, like, you're the catch. You're the catch. Why are you in this space thinking that he's the prize? He's not the prize. They'll line up. You can post on Instagram, who wants to take me to dinner tonight? Someone's going to respond. You might not like who responds, but someone's going to respond. So I always encourage like my clients, because you talk to your clients every 2 to 3 weeks. We go through life with them. I have a client that's getting married next year, and I remember when she came in, she's like, I met this guy, and he booked my cruise literally to go with him next year on our first date. And I was like, I mean, just be careful love bombing, but like, real men do that. If he really wants you around, you're it. They're getting married. So it can work out. but you have to walk in knowing that you're the prize. Like, we're doing it. And you also have to know when to leave toxic situations behind that no longer serve you. And it's okay to leave things, even if it's 10 years later, because who you were 10 years ago, you're not that person anymore. Who I am now in my 30s, 20-year-old Karen could fucking never. Like, I just posted this the other day where how I felt about my body, how I felt about who I am, what I bring to the table. I would have 20-year-old Karen like shaking. She'd be scared. She's like, who is that? How dare you walk around like that? But I'm so comfortable in who I am. I I absolutely love it. I moved through my business differently because I prioritize, whereas before I was so boy crazy that everything became more important than my goals. It was like making money, my goals, and then the boys. I was like, I'm gonna drop. I don't care. Like, cancel all my clients today. This man wants to go have pizza. And I learned my priorities and I learned how to grow up. And I think that talking about relationships within the industry and business is so important because they impact our day to day life. Like, I'm sure when you were going through your divorce, you were like, fuck it all. Like, I don't care. You're just like, "Ugh, I can't do it. It's not meant to be." It felt like your world was crashing. And that does affect your business. It affects how you show up, what you put out there, even your content. If you scroll through your feed and you're like, oh, I was depressed that week, what is it looking like?
Yeah,
So
I
that's our,
definitely took a huge step back. Like the moment that he moved out, I like, and this was, coming from someone who's been a crazy workaholic, which do not recommend. I recommend trying to find some sort
same.
of balance. But I literally was like posting every single day. I was in the shop every single day. I was like going hard. And I think a lot of it was because I didn't want to go home. And I just wanted to be away from, the situation. And obviously, like I've talked about this on other podcast episodes, I wish him well. He's a great guy. We just weren't a good fit. And then when he moved out, I was like, hold on. Like, I get to be in my home again. I get to be in my space. And I literally, and of course, like, it was like a relief, but there was also still so much sadness that I had to go through and that I had to work through and I had to, look inward. And I didn't show up to work hardly at all for like 4 or 5 months. And I completely took a step back from social media, which for me was needed. I needed that step back to be like, who am I? Who am I now? Who am I, who do I want to be? Who can I become? And, something that you said was, I am the prize. And that's something I never felt before. And I think afterwards, going through that and, turning inward, that's how I started to view dating. And that's how it made me confident. And, I wasn't nervous to go on dates anymore because I was like, I started to look at it like I'm the prize. And so I guess my question to you is, have you always felt that way? Or what work did you have to do to get to that place of knowing, hey, I'm the prize. And if they don't want it, then I can find somebody else who wants this prize.
Well, I'm the definition of daddy issues. My parents split up when I was 13, um, right before high school. So all through high school, oh, that male attention was like, I need this. And it continued through most of my life. And I didn't understand it, that I was accepting scraps from men just to get by. It's just like, oh, you're giving me the bare minimum. Oh my God, that's enough. Oh my God, he loves me. He's the love of my life. I got to a point where I was even engaged, and I was like, this man's a homebody. He doesn't want to do shit and he doesn't want to build anything. But you know what? He loves me. He's so sweet. He's so good to me. Perfect. Even my son's father. I was like, okay, cool. You're fun. Let's do this. And then after I had my son and I realized that bare minimum does nothing for anyone, because if I give my son bare minimum, we're not making it anywhere. I started to have a shift in mindset of, I need to do better. I didn't know how to do better, but I knew I wanted better. It wasn't until I came out of the pandemic and I said, I want to date. And I got dragged time and time again that I realized one, I need therapy. I need to figure this out. I need to look inwards to figure out what it is that I'm looking for. And I keep finding these men. I'm like, it can't be that all these men are just fucked and I'm not the problem. I'm the problem. So I went through therapy, still in therapy, and I just started to learn that I wasn't introducing any of these men to my son. And my therapist was like, "Oh, so they're not good enough for your son, but they're good enough for you. Why?" And I was like, "Oh, you're right. You're right." So if you're with a man that you don't want to introduce to your friends, you don't want to introduce to your siblings, you don't want to introduce to your parents, that you don't talk about, or you just keep them kind of there, or they just have a nickname in the group chat, there's a reason why you don't want them really around. And it's because they're not good enough to meet these people that you love. They're really not good enough for your life. So once I started looking at it through that perspective, people just, I was like, you're not worth it. Uh, I started looking at it like, would I introduce you to my sister? Would I introduce you to my mom? And the answer was no. I left it alone. And it changed my complete mindset on what I was looking for. And ultimately, I gave myself standards. I have a checklist. I'm very ambitious. If you're not ambitious, if you don't have goals, I don't want it because I'm trying to be rich. Are you trying to be rich? Like, so once you start putting out there that someone needs to meet your standards, shit's gonna change. Like, absolutely. And I recommend everyone go to therapy in whatever way that looks like for you. I recommend it because you're doing it for a reason. You just don't know what it is yet. And once you figure it out, you're unstoppable in this world. I promise you that.
Wow, yeah. I am a huge fan of therapy. I've been in therapy for like 4 years or so, at least once a month, if not every single week. The gal that I talk to now, I see her every single week, and I think it is so important. Even if you don't think anything crazy is going on with your life, it's really cool to uncover like subconscious beliefs that you have around your worth, around money, around, the relationships you think you deserve and what you saw, even though you didn't think it was as impactful as it was. Like, it's been eye-opening to me. And I ultimately, like, I've talked about this too, like, I've dealt with a lot of anxiety, and I think through exercise and having a therapist, it's helped me to identify, like, okay, why is this coming up? Like, why am I feeling stressed? And being able to just have that awareness of, knowing that, hey, I'm gonna be okay. Like, I've made it through these anxiety periods before, or even, when I was going through my divorce, anxiety was at an all-time high, and it was just
Oh my God, yeah.
insane. And having that unbiased person to talk to, because I think for me, ultimately, I was like, this is what's happening in my current relationship. Like, am I crazy for wanting more? Am I crazy for, wanting effort? And she was like, no, girl. And she was like, I had recently switched therapists, and she made me not feel crazy. And I think
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of us do sometimes, or like, we're taught to like keep our feelings in, or not talk about it, or like, you're making this too big of a deal, whatever. And she was like, totally validated my feelings. And I think it's so important to have someone. And of course, it's important to have your circle. Like, I talk to my sister about everything, I talk to my mom about everything, but having that outside perspective who may look at things differently than the way your family does, I think is so important.
I mean, my therapist has gone through it with me. Like, even last year when I spoke out about diversity and inclusion, I was having a whole mental breakdown of like, what did I do? And my therapist helped me through it because your girl was shook. I was sitting in my therapy, like I had a pillow because I do it virtual. I was like, I was just talking shit and here I am. What did I do? And just like working through that Um, Even accepting that I had to take a step back from just lashing in the industry in general, getting a 9 to 5 and just sitting with my own thoughts for 6 months, my therapist helped me through that too because I felt like such an instant failure. She's like, it's okay to take a step back. You're not a failure. Just calm down. Like you're doing too much. My therapist talks to me like she's my best friend, and it's the funniest thing. Or she'll just ask me questions like, so was that the best course of action? Or do you think you could have done it differently? And I'm like, why are you coming for me? I thought we're friends. Stop
Like
talking
you're
to me
supposed to
like this.
like why are you calling me out? There are sometimes too like I've said to my boyfriend now or my sister, I'm like, I'm pretty sure my therapist, I'm her favorite. I'm pretty sure I'm her favorite.
Oh yeah, I say that too. Because of my fuck buddy relationship that I have for like 13, 14 years. She's like, I would love to have both of you guys in a therapy session. And I'm like, why? She's like, because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. She's like, I would love to see. And she swears that we're like secretly in love with each other and don't know it. And I'm like in my head, like, no, we're fine. She's like, I would love to have both of you guys in a therapy session. I'm like, I don't think that's gonna happen because I'm not emotionally ready for that. So let's just stick to like everything else that I have going on in life, okay? Let's
That
do
is
that.
so funny. I love that. Okay, well, I also want to touch on something you brought up a second ago, talking about diversity and inclusion. So you were just
Mhm.
at a conference and you actually spoke at this conference. But I also want to talk about a little bit more about like what was brought up last year, what your thoughts are, and what you think the industry needs more of.
So I always tell people I'm a fat Latina. I don't fit in. I talk about sex and just the way I go about life. It's not your stereotypical lash artist. I started in what, 2017, 2016? Back, that was like the age of lashes by whoever and professionalism and like the quotes on the feeds and clean and you don't step out of bounds. I grew up in that age of lashing. And so everything always felt like, don't complain, you're fine, you know. But I think that I grew as a person and I started to realize who I was. I stepped out of that space and I just allowed myself to be myself. I am also, I do sex work as well. I have that content as well. And that taught me a lot about who I am and how to show up for my business. I wouldn't post photos of myself. I would never go on lives or on stories because I felt that I'm fat. How can I show up in this space when everyone looks a certain way? So I started just speaking to my 400 followers, just saying like, just show up. Who cares what you look like? I was drinking White Claws one day and I saw a picture from a conference and I screenshot it and I just posted it. And I said, do you feel seen? I'm from an area where diversity is just common. We actually have, I think, 5 of the 8 most diverse cities in my county. So for me, I don't know a world that's not diverse or not knowing people from different places. So to see a conference, not knowing anyone that was on the panel, not knowing anything, just screenshot it. I'm like, do you feel seen? And the responses were life changing for me because what I thought was in my mind was a reality. Uh, Women of color telling me that they can't get lashes because they have curly lashes and they'll get turned away, or um, racist comments that clients will say to certain artists because of how they look. There was a lot of people saying that they don't go to certain conferences or certain events because they don't see anyone that looks like them. Even at the conference that I just spoke at, it was 100% Latinas and women of color. And it was beautiful to see that people will show out for these type of events. People want this in my community. Why isn't it not translating to the bigger conferences? Why aren't we having conversations about the realities of socioeconomic, you know, disparity between, you know, Caucasian women and women of color? I might not be able to get a loan just off faith. They're saying, "Oh, I think you'll make it." No one's going to give me that. And that comes to the fact that I'm Hispanic. So just having so many conversations with women, I decided to call out LashCon. Not because LashCon in particular was doing anything wrong. People think that it was such an attack on it, and it wasn't. It's just when I think conference, I think LashCon. And I'm like, what a better place to start than someone that kind of started it. Everyone's going to follow your lead. And so I just wanted to say, like, let's have a conversation, have a panel to just inform people of what really goes on and why we don't feel seen. Let's talk about how people need to diversify their feeds, especially major brands, because people felt left out. If I'm saying I use Lashbox lashes, for example, doesn't matter, any brand, and I'm scrolling through their feed and I can't show them like this company's lashes on someone that looks like them, why would they trust that it's going to look good on them? So I always tell people diversify your feeds. One, it's going to make you money because you're going to get more clients, but it just proves that you can work on anyone. And some clients are just looking for that. They just want to know, like, okay, you worked on someone that looks like me. Great. I can trust you now. And I just wanted to bring those conversations to that place and to highlight people that would never get a chance. I feel like the East Coast is so separated from the lash world. It's crazy. Like I know so many amazing artists. Like the conference I spoke at was done by a 19-year-old girl who has $80,000 months, you know, doing lash product. Why isn't she talking? Why don't we have artists that are undocumented and the realities of how to get through that hurdle to have a successful business? How can we have those conversations? What if there's someone else sitting in their studio somewhere scared that because they're undocumented, they can't take clients, they can't file taxes, which is not true. They can get all these things, but how would they know that if someone hasn't openly said that situation, said, hey, I have this problem, I've solved it, and this is how I did it? But that's not encouraged and it's not seen. And that was the point of what I said. But then it turned into like a whole character thing that had me in my therapist's office like, am I not communicating properly? Like, how can I better do this? I was talking to one of my clients that does PR for like a nonprofit. I'm like, how can I say this without people thinking that it's me? Like I feel like I deserve to be there because I don't. Like I literally work a 9 to 5 right now. I'm barely lashing and I just talk shit on the internet. I just want other people to be seen. I want there to be more of a reflection of the reality of the industry on those stages. And also, it's the same people over and over. Like at one point, I made a comment that I was like, I don't even listen to podcasts anymore because it's the same people over and over. Like, can we get some sazon in there? Can we, mix it up? Here's something different. So that was basically how drinking White Claws got me into some shit.
Well, and it's so funny too, thinking about it because I feel like I'm very involved in the lash community and the lash industry, but I'm still on the outskirts. I don't hear about the drama. I don't hear about anything that's going on. I'm in my little safe bubble where I'm like, just kind of, connected with everybody. And I just remember seeing random stories and I was like, whoa, what is going on? And like people were talking about it. Like you brought a hot topic together. And
I lit
I
it up.
think you did. And I think it's a good conversation to be had. And I think, I don't know how other people perceived it or anything like that, but I think it brought up something that is important to be talked about. And unfortunately, I think it was perceived in a way that it felt like attacking when and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that was your intention at all. I think it was to
No,
just bring up that, you want to see more people like you. You want to see more people who, we don't want to see the same people over and over again. And these people on stages have amazing information. And I think one thing that stands out to me is why they'd probably be invited back is because there's so many new lash artists all the time. However, I think there
hmm
are other people who can share that same information. There are other people, and me, I've been invited to speak at these conferences and it is a huge honor. And I think you're right. And after talking with Ashley and Hakeem of Beautylicious Lashes, that's something that's very much on Ashley's mind too. And I want to get her on the pod to talk about it, but she is a huge proponent of, you know, making a platform, her platform, a space for people to see and realize that you can achieve your goals. And I think it's cool that she has opened up, so much for the Latina community to, be able to have her as an inspiration. And I think more conferences need to be done to put people in that position where they can have that opportunity to speak to more people, to share their voice, and get in front of the people who can help connect them to other people to help them reach their goals.
yeah, yeah, it was definitely not an attack. Like, far from it. I just think that no one has spoken about this issue in the way that I went about it because I just have nothing to lose. Like, I'm just a girl sitting in my bedroom with 400 followers. What was I going to lose? Nothing. I was just talking shit like I always do. And I'm glad that it made such a wave that it got people thinking because there were other artists that messaged me that were like, holy shit, the group chats are wild. Like, from you just, and I also think that my message kind of went crazy because of who I have connections with. Like, even though I had a small following, like, I'm that girl that's like, I'm your friend in the DMs. So I think that who was watching my stories or who was sharing it just pushed it so much further. You know, I was able to get in contact with, Paul, have conversations with him, which I was open with everyone. I believe that that only happened because of who was following me and who was able to bridge that gap and have those conversations. I was supposed to go to LashCon. I chose not to go just because of a conversation that I had. I'm not airing anything out, but I just felt that it wasn't productive for me in that moment and that I just needed to take a step back and just take a moment. I was like, I said what I said. We'll move on from here and figure it out. And seeing someone like Sherlyn, who actually threw the first conference in this area, because we've never had a lash event here in the DMV. For those that aren't familiar, it's Washington, D.C., and the outer suburbs of Maryland and Virginia. That's what's called the DMV area. So it was the first ever lash event that happened here. Um, I hope that more trainers want to come to this area. We've had Maven, we've had Lash Anarchist, and we've had Lashbox. So hopefully more people will want to come train here because a small event got 180 people out here. And so that's so exciting. And I hope that it continues to grow. I'm sure that next year it's going to be even bigger. She's already planning on doing it. So I hope that it just kind of opens up that conversation because even during my presentation, at this conference, I asked open-endedly, why aren't you guys going to lash events? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a lash bash or a seminar. And a lot of the people there said, because I don't see people that look like me. One person specifically said, I'm half Black, half Puerto Rican. I don't see anyone that fits my aesthetic, that fits what I look like or what I've gone through in those spaces. So why would I go? And even if that's not the case, because everyone tells me that LashCon is more diverse or anything, I've never been, so I can't speak on that. But it's the perception. Perception and reality are two different things, but for some people, their perception is their reality until proven otherwise. That's just how life is. And so right now, that's the perception. The perception is there's no reason for me to go because I'm not going to get anything out of it because no one is there looks like me.
Mhm.
No one has a story similar to mine. So I hope that it changes. I'm sure it will in the next few years. But I'm just glad that it's in people's minds, that whole era of it going down, that people still think about it and it's still relevant. And I hope that it continues to change because bottom line, including more people means more money. And we're all here to make money. We're all here to push information and educate. The best way to do that is having more people included. It's just going to scale things, it's going to make it bigger. And isn't that the goal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I think that's where community comes into it so much. And again, like I want to come from a place of knowing that I've always seen people who look like me. And I know that, that's not lost on me, that I don't know how hard that is, and I don't know how intimidating that might be. And I think that's where having the community, or at least, the connections that I've made on Instagram has helped me feel more comfortable going to these conferences. And before I was asked to speak, going to these conferences made me nervous. And even though there were people who looked like me, and I think, building that community and coming together is, and that might be something where you get a group connected and being like, hey, let's all go together. Like, we're going to experience this together. We're going to start ushering in that wave of people who look like us and connect with us and can build that part of the conference where other people who look like us feel comfortable and confident. And I think that's something that Ashley has done a really good job, doing and helping other people feel connected. And um, I think community is so important. And I'm a huge fan of these conferences, and I do think you're right. I think there is, I think that conversation had to come up where it, as much as, and again, I've never put on a conference. I have no idea. I know how much work goes into it. And I think it is important to have that inclusivity because, in my opinion, I've never wanted anyone to feel left out of anything. And, that's something that is I've become more aware of after that conversation came up, that even though someone may not look like me, I want them to feel welcome in my presence. I want them to feel welcome in my space or if they, see me at a conference. And, you know, do you have any advice for anyone who, wants to go to these things, if they can like who they should be reaching out to, or who you think should be like ushering in that new wave, or how it can be talked about in a way that is inclusive?
I think that the biggest thing is being okay with being uncomfortable. For me, I've learned to be okay with being uncomfortable in certain spaces because I talk about sex. That makes people uncomfortable just naturally. Um, but I did say at the conference that I spoke at, we're not going there because we're also scared of being uncomfortable. And it's okay to be uncomfortable and to push yourself into places that you would never think that you're going to go to. And I think that's another aspect of it for change to happen. It's just showing up and being loud and being like, I'm here. Show people what Latinas can do in this space. Like, for example, I took my own advice and I'm going to Wednesday Summit in Houston. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going by myself and I'm just like, I'm going to be there. And I hope to bring back through being there, like, it's not scary. Let's just go. This is what I gained. This is what is worth it. But we need to show up and prove that, hey, I should also be here too. I can also consume this information and bring it back. I kind of want to bridge the gap between the area that I'm from and our, like, I always say that our Lash world is like its own little ecosystem. We're kind of to ourselves. We don't really step outside of this bubble, and I want to bridge that gap and see and show people like, yeah, they might not look like you, but the information that you get and the things that you can learn from there will make you 20 times better. And then one day you might be there because you're building those connections, you're networking, you're putting yourself in rooms. For example, for me, for Wednesday Summit, I have the the privilege of knowing some of the people that are going to be speaking. Either we're DM friends, we talk all the time, or I physically have met you. And that makes me really happy to know that even though I'm going to be in an uncomfortable space, I've at least made connections and networked enough to be able to meet people and say, well, I'm here. Like, someone from where I'm from is here. Let's do this. Like, let me show what we're going to gain from here. And that's my goal in the next year, is to attend more events just to show what is happening at these events, why people should come here, and then to also reflect back and say, hey, this is what you need. This is what we should offer. I think this conversation would be beautiful to have in this type of space. Like, for example, if you're having a business summit or a business conference, whatever, how about we talk about the socioeconomic reality that minorities go through? Have someone that can offer guidance on how to get loans, what you should look out for in leasing spaces, things that generationally minorities aren't taught. We're not taught about credit. We're not taught about how to get generational wealth, how to pay our taxes and things like that. Those are, especially in my household, it was the adults took care of it. You'll figure it out when you're an adult. And it's like, how? How am I supposed to learn this? Like, so I would love to see that type of information brought into it. It's not just a race thing. It's so much deeper than that. It's just, as minorities, we go through very different struggles. Like I always say, like, your poor isn't my poor. It's very different. My reality, my financial reality is very different from yours. Why don't we talk about everyone's reality? Because it's going to resonate more, especially to newer artists that are like, I don't know how to pay taxes. How do I do that? Well, let's show you. Instead of saying like hire um, an accountant, well, what kind of accountant do I hire? Who do I would love to see more of that information because I think it would help minorities so much more than just this is how you market your feed or this. I just think it's a different aspect of the industry that we should talk about.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I'm excited to see what you do with it. And in my mind, my wheels are turning like, oh, you're going to have online courses on this. You're going to be able to, open up your platform and help so many people and still talk about sex while doing it. And like, or even
I'm
like connect the people you want to come in and talk about it.
Yeah, I'm actually starting a series of master classes that I'm gonna do like once a month, and it's called "Let Me Hurt Your Feelings" because that's what I do. I tell you guys the truth. Um, so I think next month is gonna be how to market like you're on OnlyFans because
Ooh.
I learned most of my marketing skills through selling adult content. And the things that I've learned on how to market, they're golden.
That is so
So
interesting. I love it. Okay, well, Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a long episode, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your, expertise and your thoughts and everything. I think this was a really, really good episode and, conversations that, need to be brought up. And I really appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable with us. Tell us where we can find you. And of course, we'll have like all the links and everything in the show notes. But where do you hang out most and where can we hang out with you?
So if you're interested in my lashing, my Instagram is Curren, Kuren.co. But if you're interested in the sex, the spicy, the ratchet, it's over on Curren After Dark. So Kuren After Dark. That's where I hang out. Like I said, I'm starting a series of master classes that every month they're just going to be on a different topic. And I'm going to hurt your feelings just to make you better, respectfully. So that's what I'm working on. And who knows? I'm so up in the air. I just do whatever I feel like it. So we'll see where it goes. But thank you so much for having me. I'm like, I watch who you talk to and I'm like, I'm honored.
Oh, well, I'm super excited you were able to come on. For the listeners, don't forget to screenshot and share, tag us both, and we will see you guys in the next episode.